This is Motley Fool Answers. I'm Allison Southwick, and I'm joined as always by Robert Brokamp, personal finance expert here at the Motley Fool. Hello, bro.
Hello, everyone.
And this week, that sounded so somber.
Oh, sorry. Let me do that again. Hello, everyone.
There we go. That's better. In this week's episode, we're going to share a full live interview by Bro and Megan Brinsfield. They talked with Tiffany Aliche, better known as the Budgetnista. All that and actually nothing more because it's a great interview on its own on this week's episode of Motley Fool Answers. So, bro, we're actually going to do something a little different this week because you had a great interview on Fool Live, and we thought we would just share it here with our listeners on Motley Fool Answers.
Right. And just so people understand what Fool Live is, it's like a group Zoom call that goes on every day for people who are members of some of our premium services. So Tiffany was kind enough to come on and we did an interview with her and we thought it was such good information. We thought, let's just share it with the Motley Fool Answers audience.
Let's actually. What a great idea. But before we get started, I have yet another favor to ask. This one's super easy. You maybe noticed that you haven't heard about Rocket Mortgage or Harry's Razors or the Molecule Air Filter lately. Well, that's because the Motley Fool is focused on helping everyone, from our members to our readers to listeners like you, invest better. And so we're taking a break from those external ads to instead promote ways the Motley Fool can help you invest better. So to do that, we'd like to know just a little bit about who you are and how we can help. So if you can go to mot.ly/survey, that's mot.ly/SURVEY, we have a 2-question survey that will take less than a minute. Again, that's mot.ly/survey. And the URL will also be included in the description of this week's episode. Thanks so much.
So, bro, take it away.
Oh, him again?
Hello, fools. I'm Robert Brokamp, advisor for the Retirement Service, co-advisor of Total Income, co-host of the Answers podcast, and I'm joined today by Megan Brinsfield, director of financial planning for Motley Fool Wealth Management. And we are super excited to welcome a special guest today, Tiffany Aliche, otherwise known as the Budgetnista, and an amazing success story. She has gone from being unemployed with tens of thousands of dollars in debt to founding and running her own company with annual income in the 8 figures and playing a key role in getting legislation related to financial literacy passed in her home state of New Jersey. Tiffany, welcome to Motley Fool Live.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Megan.
So now before we get to the interview, we have to make the lawyers happy and ask Megan to read a really boring legal disclaimer. So take it away, Megan.
With that tee up, I'll take it away. So Fool Wealth is who I work for, and it's an affiliate of the Motley Fool LLC and is a separate legal entity. And all of our asset management decisions and financial planning advice are made independently by myself and others at Fool Wealth. Neither Tom or David Gardner or any other Motley Fool analyst is involved in our investment decision-making or daily operations. Also, do not take anything I say as personalized investment or tax advice. I'm not trying to recommend that you buy, sell, or hold anything or follow any specific investment strategy or financial plan. As always, we encourage you to seek personalized advice from qualified professionals regarding all personal finance and tax decisions. Back to you, Robert.
All right. So Tiffany, let's start with your personal story. So we're currently in the 3rd recession of this century, but I'm guessing that you're doing just fine, partially at least because of the lessons you learned during the last recession. So tell us a little bit about your history, what the last recession was like for you, and what has happened since then.
No, certainly. The last recession caught me off guard. I was not prepared because quite honestly, I was a school teacher and, I was pretty confident. I'm like, I don't know that school teachers lose their jobs because, we are essential workers. And now yet here we are back again. But yeah, I was a school teacher and I didn't lose my job actually in 2008 when so many of my friends did, but I lost it at the tail end of 2009. So it really took me by surprise. But up until like, I would say 25, 26, I was what I call financially perfect. I grew up in a household money was talked about. I wasn't scared of talking about finances. My father was a CFO of a small nonprofit. He also had his MBA in economics and his BA in finance. My mom was a nurse and we literally used to have money meetings. So I didn't grow up with the angst that most people did. So by the time I was 25, even though I was teaching preschool and wasn't making much, I think I was making like $40,000 a year. By the time I was 25, I had 40,000 saved. I bought a condo. I had an 802, I think, credit score. I didn't have any credit card debt. I paid off, like my parents helped with my undergrad degree. Plus I commuted. So what I did have in student loans, I was able to pay that off a few years after school. So financially perfect, like, oh, okay. So I honestly couldn't relate. Although I was helping my friends with their budgets and savings and things like that, I couldn't relate to the mistakes because I had not yet made them, but I was going to. Then when I was 26, I went on to get my master's in education. And I was like, okay, so I went from no debt to I had a mortgage, not so bad. I had student loans because of my master's, not so bad. But then by 26, I said, okay, now I'm ready to learn to invest. And instead of asking my father, who has literally 2 degrees and years of experience, I'm going to ask a friend of mine. And so I asked a friend of mine who appeared to be independently wealthy because he had like a really nice car and like a fancy apartment. He's like, well, first things first, you have to learn to invest with other people's money. I didn't realize he meant my money. So what he postured it as is that, do you have a credit card? I said, yes, but I paid off in full every month because as instructed by my father. And he was like, well, did you know you could pull money off a credit card? I did not know that. So he said, not only can you pull it off 1, you could pull it off 2. I was like, double the mistake. Let's do it. So I pulled off $20,000 off of my credit cards and I went to invest with him. Let's just say that didn't happen. I ended up $35,000 in credit card debt when I didn't have credit card debt prior. And I just remember thinking, the first year I said I didn't want to take responsibility for the mistake that I'd made. I did not tell my dad or my mom, but I paid just the minimum because I said, you know what, he's going to come back or he's going to take care of this because it's not my fault. And so from age 27, I didn't do anything. Well, 27, I took out the money. 28, I just paid the minimum. Finally, at 29, I said, all right, I'm going to pay off this debt. I'm just going to buckle down. I live pretty frugally anyway. And then 29 is when I lost my job. So now it's like, I've got a mortgage, student loan, credit card debt. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. I've never been in this situation. So I fell into this like dark hole of like spiral, like, because I'm 29 going on 30. I've lost everything as far as I can tell, as far as financially. So I ended up moving back home with my parents without telling them why. They knew it was the recession, obviously. And they also knew I lost my job, but they didn't know about the credit card debt. So I lived with them for a year. Then I lived with my sister on her couch for a year while I tried to figure out my life. Because back then, now we're getting the $600 a week in our stimulus as a stimulus check. But what was happening then is they just extended unemployment. Typically, you can get unemployment for like up to a year. They extended it to 2 years. So I said, okay, you have 2 years to figure out what are you going to do with your life. I was afraid to go back to work for someone because I thought if you can lose a job as a preschool teacher, essential, then that's not safe. What could be safe? So I tried a bunch of different things. I tried party promoting, party planning. I volunteered everywhere I can think of, but while doing so, I was helping my friends budget, save, get out of debt, all these things. And one day my friend said, you should turn that into a business. And I'm like, can you? Now I had gone to school, my bachelor's degree is in business, but I hadn't used it. And so I tried to charge people one-on-one, only to find the people that you're actually helping with their budget. The reason why they hire you is because they don't have any money. So that was a bad business model. So I switched my business model to one to few, and I worked on getting contracts. And I got my first contract with the United Way. And I remember I was excited because they were going to pay me, I think like $300 or $400 a class. And I had a 6-week course that I'd written for them. And so I did. And that was like my first, okay, maybe I can really make a run at this. My little sister gave me the nickname, the Budgetnista. So that became, because she said like, I'm not like the fashionista who is really fashionable, but I am very cheap. So I should be the Budgetnista. That's what you get with little sisters. And so I said, that'll be the name that I'll use. And so I started working with the United Way. And then before I knew it, colleges would reach out, churches would reach out, and I thought, oh, I can also speak. And so along the way, I just started to create additional streams of revenue that I could add to my business model. And it was really always one of service, because I love teaching, I love serving, but I wanted to always be in alignment with that. So that grew until one day I started about 4 or 5 years ago. I started my own online school to not only to me teach for me to teach financial education, but to showcase my friends that also taught financial education. And it just really took off. And yeah, we had our first 7-figure month this April. And now our
Wow.
recurring income is just over 800 and something thousand dollars a month. So we're officially just squeaking by of a 8-figure a year company. So it's been crazy from last recession, out of work preschool teacher, this recession, I don't know. I mean, my net worth is 7-figure, but 7-figure business owner woman. So it's been a wild and crazy ride.
That's really impressive. Really
Thank
impressive.
you.
Yeah, I think one part of your story that I just honed in on was how you said you were financially perfect for such a long period of time. And sometimes when I talk to clients, I run into folks like that, things have worked out for them for a long period, and then they might hit a speed bump and not be prepared to react to it because they've never had to, face that sort of financial adversity before.
Yes.
So I'm curious, in your timeline, how long was that gap between, facing some of these challenges, kind of getting knocked down, to sort of gathering yourself up and saying, okay, I can go on offense again?
So it took about 2 years because it was so devastating. And for the first year and a half, I thought I was the only one. It wasn't until like I'd been avoiding my friends because I didn't want to admit, oh, I'm 29, moving back home. So I wasn't going out. I wasn't picking up the phone. And it wasn't until like my best friend Linda kind of like broke through and, she's like, what's going on? And I shared like, oh, all these things. I lost my job, credit card debt, blah, blah. She's like, so like regular life? And I was like, what? She's like, Tiffany, you were the only one in our 20s who wasn't broke or like who didn't have a totally messed up financial life. I was like, I was? She's like, yeah, you sound like everybody else. She's like, oh, you don't have a job? Oh, it's the recession. Oh, you have a credit card debt? Literally, we all have credit card debt. You got student loans? Yeah, all of our college friends. And so it gave me like this, like, oh, I'm not some terrible person, which is what I was telling myself because I made financial mistakes. I was just a person that made financial mistakes. And it gave me the permission I needed to forgive myself because I had not. And so that's when, once I was able to do that, I realized that when things like that happen, I had to go back to the basics, which were living under your means, being frugal, budgeting, creating a savings plan, paying down your debt, managing your credit. So those were the basics. I had to go back to like literally what I'd learned, at home, and from there build. And so that helped to crack open this shame that I was feeling. And it gave me the permission, like I said, that I needed to forgive myself. So it was about almost 2 years. But still, there was another 2 years worth of struggle. So 29, I lost my job and everything else. And I really didn't start to feel like my head was above water until I want to say 32, so it wasn't a quick turnaround, it certainly was hard. But something in me realized that, that there's light on the other side if I keep going. I knew I didn't want to stay where I was, but I knew I just had to keep going. Something had to change.
You talked about the basics, and I assume because you're the budgetista, a budget is sort of the foundation of it. I think most people understand why you should budget, but they're not maybe sure where to start, or they have started and they can't stick with it. So what do you recommend people do in terms of setting up a budget and making sure you find some way to stay on top of it?
No, absolutely. Because I know budget sounds so boring. Everybody wants to invest. And I'm like, yeah, that it is the foundation that you're needing to be able to invest. I'm not budgeting for budgeting's sake. I'm budgeting to create space so I can grow wealth. And so my husband is like, so I'm like spreadsheet girl. And I know, but that's because I enjoy that. I get that from my dad. He had like the big legal paper when we did our family's budget. My husband He's not doing all that. I've tried. So instead, we've made it super simple, and we've had his paycheck split before he gets it. So I'm like, split it before you get it. And so directly from HR, we've already determined 2 checking, 2 savings. Some of his money goes into our bills account. So having a separate checking account to pay bills. Some of his money goes into his personal savings account. He and I both have personal savings accounts. So when we spend money, we know it's not coming from the family pot. Some of his money goes into a emergency account. We've pretty much fully funded that. So now he's just contributing to our stepdaughter's college fund. And then some goes to our long-term savings account. And so that now before, like, we purchased the house that we're living in now, we were able to purchase this house cash a couple of years ago. So now we're at a point now where emergency fund is fully funded. So any excess money now goes to just our investment strategy and our investment plan with our investment plan, our financial planner. So, but that's the split. That if you are not good at budgeting and you don't want to do the spreadsheets and you don't enjoy that, then I just encourage you to have your 2 checking, your 2 savings, bills, spending, emergency, long-term savings. And once you get to a place where you feel fairly comfortable with your emergency fund, maybe 3 months, ideally 6 months, then I spill over into diverting that money to some sort of investment plan, whether it's you're going to save to purchase a rental property, or investment property. Maybe you might start a business, because the only way to invest is not just in the market. I know I wasn't very comfortable in the market. So for me, I was like, but my business, I feel really comfortable and it's paid off. Like, I remember I read this book, Delivering Happiness by Tony Hirsch. He's the founder of Zappos. And, Amazon has now since bought Zappos. But still, this man is a billionaire. And he was like, I remember he gave me permission not to feel comfortable investing in the market because he didn't. He was like, I think I'll invest and grow $1 billion business instead. I'm like, that sounds like a plan. So that's where I started with business, then real estate, because my husband and I also have a second property that we purchased. And now I'm like, okay, I mean, for my retirement account, yes, but in the market, but not myself personally, because it just wasn't someplace I felt super comfortable. But yeah, exploring different ways to invest, but splitting your money like that will give you the basic budget that you need in order to move forward at the very least. Like I said, I like to get granular, but you don't have to be successful with your budget.
And one key of that very quickly is that you and your husband each have your own accounts and you can spend it however you want.
Yes.
That way you're not all over each other spending and saying,
Yes.
well, how did you spend this? Because you've already funded your goals. So whatever you do with that other money is totally up to you.
Exactly. And it just because a lot of couples ask me, like, what should we do? And, I used to be a budget bully, quote unquote, for my husband. I'm like, whatever. So I realized, like, you have to allow adults autonomy, so we have like, well, are the bills paid? Yes. We both contribute to the bills account. Our savings saved? Yes. We both have contributed to the savings account. Our investments being made? Yes. So this money that gets put into his account and the money that gets put into mine, checking account, we can do whatever we want. If he might save it up and get something big or whatever, but I know that when I see something new, although the urge is to be like, how much does that cost? Where'd you get it? He looks at me and I look at him. He's like, I'm like, those are cute sneakers. But I know that it didn't come from our plans together. And so it's just made life so much easier.
In terms of budgeting, you really build on that with your program and the Live Richer Challenge.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear more about, just how you started that. I know you mentioned starting doing classes and doing more one to few, one to many kind of instruction. But I remember hearing about the Live Richer Challenge kind of when it first started gaining momentum, and it was a Facebook group where you were helping women go through this 6-week kind of budget transformation.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious how that got started and how it gained momentum.
No, absolutely. To me, it was a pivotal moment in business. So it allowed me to grow the community. So I would say Beyonce has the Beehive and the Budgetnista has the Dream Catchers. That's our name of our community. And so in 2014, I was still working for the United Way, still teaching those classes, but now I was also marketing my United Way classes because they were like, I wanted to make sure I could fill them so they would continue to pay me. So I learned to market using social media. And then what happened was kind of strange. It wasn't just people who lived locally that started to ask me about attending class. All of a sudden, people in other states, women in Florida, in Ohio, in California. And I was just like, well, I don't teach there. And I thought, well, why don't I teach there? What if I took this series I wrote for the United Way and took it online? And so I did. And I called it the Live Richer Challenge. And it was 6 weeks in person, but I made the first Live Richer Challenge 5 weeks online. And I told myself, I gave myself this arbitrary goal. I said, I want 10,000 women to sign up. And so it took a full year. Now we can do this in like 2 hours, but it took a full year to convince 10,000 women to sign up for this free Live Richer Challenge, because it seemed like free. Why are you giving it away for free? So people were very skeptical. Then in January 2015, we launched the Live Richer Challenge with just over 10,000 women that signed up. And it's a daily course. So the way the classes work is that every week I would create a theme. So for the fundamentals edition of the Live Richer Challenge, the very first one, week 1 was mindset, week 2, budgeting and savings, week 3, credit and debt, week 4, insurance, and week 5, basic investing. And that's the way it went. So every day was tied to the theme for the week. And so it would be a daily task. So I literally preschool teachered you through the task. This is exactly how you create like your budget. I did everything but come through the computer and take your pencil and write it for you. So because people assume that just because someone is smart, they know how. I know so many attorneys, nurses, doctors, engineers who are like, yeah, I know how to budget. I don't know how to budget. Or like, oh yeah, I know all about credit. They know nothing. And so I assumed that you didn't know how to do anything except for read, write, add, subtract. And so I created it, and 10,000 women went through it. I created a Facebook group. Facebook groups had just come out. And so it was a place that we all kind of congregated to talk about the task that day. By the end of that first iteration of the Live Richer Challenge, women were like, oh, can you do it again? My mom missed it. My sister missed it. My cousin, my whoever, and I thought, you know what, I'll automate it. And so I did. And very quickly, the next month, 20,000 women had signed up. And I was like, wow, okay. So the first Live Richer Challenge lived on throughout the year, and people would just sign up and tell their friends to sign up. Then the next year they said, can we do it again? So I started to create more specified editions. I did the savings edition, the credit edition, the net worth edition, the home buying edition. And it went from 10,000 women, and now well over 900,000 women have signed up for one or more of the Live Richer Challenges in the last, 5 years? And it has built this amazing community that has allowed me to create these other businesses. So although the challenges are still free, it has allowed me to create this community, to create a platform where people have just come to trust and love the Budgetnista brand through those challenges. And then they're introduced to other things that I do.
Yeah, in preparation for speaking with you today, I did join your Facebook group. So I'm an official dream catcher, I'm proud to say. Yes. And I noticed that, now it seems like you've modified the weeks a little bit. So there is a week that's focused on kind of the increase side of the equation, that earning more, negotiating your pay, working on side hustles. And I know you recently spoke out on Twitter about being offered less to speak at a conference, less than other white women, less than other men that were asked to speak.
Significantly less.
And yeah, it was jarring. And I think so many women don't know where to start when it comes to figuring out if they are earning a fair wage, especially, in the world of speaking that you're doing. A lot of those agreements are considered confidential or non-disclosure. So I'm wondering, how you went about finding that out and how you coach other women who might be in a similar situation.
So the truth is that when it comes to your speaking agreement, I don't know that I've ever signed an NDA for my speaking agreement. That's not honestly typical. That what I found instead is that people just don't talk about it, not because they can't, but because people don't feel comfortable sharing numbers. I don't mind sharing numbers. And so what I did was I knew that, because I already heard the whispers of what people for this conference made, like on the low end, maybe like 15,000, on the high end, 50,000. So I already kind of knew that. So when the offer was made to me at 2,500, I remember thinking, not Tiffany 10 years ago, but me now, 2,500 is like what the local church will do as like they call it like a love offering. Like, we know we can't afford what you'd, normally get, but, we took an offering and we just thank you for your service. I mean, 2,500, I remember thinking, are they going to ask me to sweep the floors after this? Because it was egregious when I'd known that they paid just someone 2 years ago, a white man, they paid him 50,000 and he said it on the stage. And I just remember thinking, okay, so my keynote speaking fee currently is $30,000 and I command that. I've gotten that because I've just been 10 years in this and I've grown such a successful business. And quite honestly, what do I need $2,500 for when if we had a $2,500 day, that would be a bad day in business, And so, yeah, of course I declined, but first I reached out to other, especially women. I wanted to know the ones that had spoken and had done keynotes at this conference, what were they offered? And that's when, and like I said, there was no NDA because I know when my offer came in, that was not a requirement. And so I got a gauge of, so I didn't ask publicly. I just pinged them. Hey, I saw you spoke. Can you share with me if you feel comfortable? Because I was offered this. So I always, when I'm teaching financial education, what I found that helps to make people feel comfortable is to offer up first. Hey, I was offered 2,500. Just wanted to know if that was normal or not. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. I just wanted to ask. No, I don't mind. I was offered 3,500. Interesting. I was offered a Starbucks gift card, literally. I was like, wow. Oh no, I personally know the gentleman who spoke, he got 15, he got 10, he got 30. I'm like, wow. So it was beyond egregious. And quite honestly, I mean, more than insulting, because, the person who asked me to speak at this conference, he's well aware of the success of my business. What the thought was that the privilege was mine to speak at his conference. But the truth is, that's just not true. There is a mutually beneficial relationship here that, that I would bring to the table. And I'd spoken at this conference before and have gotten the only 2 standing ovations in that conference history. So it wasn't like he was like, is Tiffany going to do well? It's like, we can go back to when she spoke here before. So it wasn't a keynote, but still so yeah, unfortunately, there are moments when you take less because you need to feed yourself and your family. And I've certainly done that early on in my career. But one thing I've learned from home is that you have to maintain for yourself an expectation of excellence. So I came from the type of home where if I got a 96, my dad would say, what happened to the other 4 points? Like literally verbatim. And I'm like, what? But it's a 96. And he's like, okay, not, you can do better. I know you can. Or if I got a B, he would ask me, did anyone in my class get an A? And if I said yes, he would ask me, I remember I was a kid, I didn't understand. He would ask me, did Sarah, who got an A, does she have 2 heads? And I'm like, my dad is Nigerian, just to be honest, right? And I'm like, I don't understand. My mom was like, he wants to know if she has 2 brains instead of 1, and maybe that's why she got an A and you got a B. I'm like, so in other words, do better. Like, what's so special about Sarah? Because in his estimation, Tiffany, you're smart, you can do it. And so I've always taken this expectation of excellence for myself internally. And so what I realize is that when I show up the best that I know how, and over time, your reputation precedes you, and I'm able to command what I deserve. And when I can't command what I deserve, then I decline and I make it myself. So the Literature Challenge, I reached out to all these brands to work with me to do the initial Literature Challenge. They all declined because, quite honestly, most of this is from a brand themselves. A woman who worked for the brand pulled me to the side and said, it's because most of the women that you're serving are Black women. And the thought is, in this financial space, there's no money in serving Black women. And I remember I was so mad, but I'm actually really happy that happened, because then the Literature Challenge would not be mine. I would not be here. This audience of 1 million+ women worldwide are a product of the Budgetnista. And I can speak directly to that audience and share my products and services with them. So imagine if a brand had attached themselves. Now, those very same brands that did not want to work with me then, I mean, every day, I feel like every hour of every day, just today, 3 banks alone. I typically don't work with, I'm not even typically, I've never worked with a big bank because most of them are just not in alignment with what I'm trying to do. So it's funny how everything comes full circle. When you raise to the level of excellence, you force people to treat you differently or they lose out. So I can literally, I work with very few brands on purpose so I can align myself with what I believe to be my integrity, which is I only share things that are going to be good for my audience. And I can do that because there's nobody who I have to answer to but myself. But everyone can't do that. I could not do that when I first started, but over time, I created an environment for myself where I can. And so that's what I encourage is that ask questions, reach out to other people that you feel like you can safely ask, what they made, too many times are what we make is a secret. And then 2, hold yourself to a standard of excellence. And either it will force someone's hand or will force you to create a way for yourself internally where you don't have to ask for anything. Instead, they will come and ask you.
Let me just say, I'm not surprised at all that you got standing ovations because I want to recommend everyone to go to YouTube, find you on YouTube. If you want to get your personal finance advice with some singing, with some dancing, a ton of personality, Tiffany is the person to look for. So anyways, I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Well, thank you. That's the preschool teacher in me. I mean, to me, that was the best job to prepare me to do what I do now. That because money can be pretty scary and boring. And I'm like, why can't we sing and make it interesting and engaging? So thank you.
It's definitely interesting and engaging. It's outstanding. But to bring us to education here, by the way, I used to be a teacher and I also have a master's in education. So we have that in common.
Awesome.
But you had a role in passing legislation in New Jersey that mandates financial education for middle schoolers. So tell us about the genesis of the Budgetnista law in New Jersey.
So a friend of mine, Angela V. McKnight, she's an assemblywoman, and I actually met her through teaching at the United Way. She was one of my students. So she did a lot of volunteer work in Jersey City, in New Jersey, where she's from. And someone suggested that she should run and be an assemblywoman because she just did such good work. So she did, and she won. And she came to me and said, I really want my first year to be focused on education. And she knew I'd been a teacher. She knew I had my master's in education. And I said, I agree. And she said, I'm thinking about something for financial education. I said, well, New Jersey's really at the forefront of this. We already have a law in place for high school. But when I taught preschool, I was teaching age-appropriate financial education to kids. And I think that really there should be, as soon as you step into the public school system in New Jersey, you should start getting financial education, age-appropriate financial education. That's how I grew up and the reason why I'm here now. And she said, okay. So we met at a Starbucks in Newark, New Jersey, where I live, and we started to craft out language for a bill. Then we met with some people who would be affected by the bill, so other principals, other teachers, and really started to craft what should it be like. Of course, Angela has her staff that had to do all the other stuff that has to happen when it comes to writing a bill. But Angela wanted to understand, from an educator's perspective, what would it look like played out in the classroom? Because so many times, if you remember being a teacher, they would have some new mandate and you're like, who made this up? This is not going to be good for the kids. And so I really listened to the pushback and I'm like, oh, that's right. I remember being annoyed by that. So instead of the bill saying, hey, we're going to stop and have financial literacy time, let's talk about that financial literacy should be integrated into the day. Meaning if you're going to do art, how about today you do a savings box where the kids decorate a shoebox and you talk about savings with art. And if you're going to do reading time, so how about the book that you choose this week is going to be a book that teaches how to count or how to count money or whatever, how to save. And so that was really great. So she took the law, so it has to go to committee through the education committee since it was an education law. Then the House voted on it. Then the Senate in New Jersey had to vote on it. So the first iteration, it got all the way to the governor's desk. He promised he would sign it. He did not. He was on his way out. So in New Jersey, if a bill isn't signed, it's basically vetoed by just basically being ignored. So we had to go back. So it took 2 years to get there. So we were like really discouraged, but we went back, and you have to go through the whole process of reintroducing the bill again, which we did. So again, committee, House, Senate, but this time it was pushed back, and they said, instead of elementary and middle school, let's take off the elementary component and just have middle school. And at this point I was like, fine, whatever. We'll go get elementary later. And so we did. It went to the current governor's desk. And not only did he say, this is awesome, but he allowed us to have a law signing day, which does not happen because hundreds of laws are passed. So this way we chose, Angela chose a middle school in New Jersey, and the kids got to see in real lifetime a bill being signed into law. And it was really a magical time, especially looking back at it now. It was signed in January 2019. And what was magical about it, especially now with so much civil unrest, is that Angela is a Black woman. The Governor Phil Murphy, who couldn't be there, sent instead his deputy governor. She's the first African-American woman deputy governor, Sheila Oliver, and then myself. And the school was the Barack Obama Middle School. And so you have all these Black and brown, beautiful children watching on stage as 3 Black women helped to create a bill and turn it into a law right in front of their eyes. And I remember when she signed it, my mom was there, my friends were there. And it just was a magical moment of like, what's possible, especially when to a community that's told that so much is not possible. So it was just an awesome time. And I didn't think about it because honestly, I'm somebody who plows through. So I do a thing. I'm like, yeah. It wasn't until my neighbor around the corner, she has a daughter, Olivia, who's in middle school. And I was hanging out at her house and she said, Miss Tiffany, can you help me with my homework? And I said, sure. So I'm helping her with homework. And it was like something about money. I'm like, you're learning about money in school? Oh my God, my law. And like it hit me like Olivia is like living my law. So I was just like, do you know when I wrote a law? She was like, okay, so how do you do your homework? So she didn't care that much. But it was amazing because what was so great about it is that the law, very quickly, they put it into action. So, you know, there are middle schoolers now who are learning about financial education in school. And what I didn't know too is that a friend of mine, I didn't write the curriculum because schools could choose whatever curriculum that they wanted. And honestly, I was at capacity. I don't have time. But because of that, they were able to employ educators who did write curriculum. And so a friend of mine was telling me, you know, you got my friend a job. And I was like, how? He was like, you know, New Jersey was looking for people to write financial curriculum for middle school students. And he was one of the people that they chose. So there's just a ripple effect when you show up, you know, that you have to bring your best. There is somebody who needs you to show up. And I just wish more of us realize just how amazing whatever it is that's inside you to unlock that so the world can be better. And, you know, to me, it's more than money, honestly. To me, this is really a movement, and money is merely one of the tools that I use to make the world better. But yeah, just like, I just wish more people understood that there's something in all of us that if we unlock, the world would just be a better place. And yeah, so to me, there's nothing better than teachers. So Robert, you're my fave. Megan, I love you too, but you know.
I can only do so much.
It's really impressive. You deserve so much credit for that. And I know we're kept you a little longer than we scheduled. Megan, did you have one last question you wanted to ask?
I did. One of my favorite things that you talk about is Wanda. And so I was just hoping you could wrap up a little bit with what Wanda does in your life.
Absolutely. So I read the study once that said the reason why people don't save for retirement is there's a disconnect. They literally cannot visualize themselves as an older person. And so I remember, like, I saw that there was this simulation that these financial companies were going to come up with, so you can like put your picture in and see yourself as you're older. And I just remember thinking, like, I would always kind of play with my friends that when I'm old, that my old lady name would be Wanda. And so I thought, you know, that I would do that with my friends, but what if I made this a financial tool? And so I always tell folks, you know, think about your 80-year-old self. Think about, like, you know, what you'd wear, how you sound. For some reason, my Wanda is like a little bit on the mean side. She loves taking like the balls that the kids throw in the yard, and she's like, it's mine now, you know? And so I just imagine Wanda with all the sass, right? And so she's my 80-year-old self. And when I'm making financial choices now, I'm able to disassociate myself and think to myself, what would Wanda say? I get to see Wanda like, oh, so another vacation. Interesting. Oh, so another day of just, frozen food because you don't want to save for our future. And I'm like, okay, Wanda, I will save more. I will be more responsible. So it's just a fun game that I encourage people to play. Like, what would Wanda say? What is your old person name? What is your 80-year-old self's name? Because it is truly your younger self's job to look after your older self. And if you kept that in mind, you would just manipulate and move with your money differently.
Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people go to learn more about you, all your educational offerings, and the Live Richer Challenge?
Sure. So you can find me. I am The Budgetnista on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. I'm even on TikTok, but I don't TikTok because my stepdaughter refuses to teach me. But if you're wanting to join one of the free Live Richer challenges, you can go to livericherchallenge.com, and just anything, all things Budgetnista, you can go to thebudgetnista.com.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has really been a pleasure. Hopefully we'll stay in touch. The Motley Fool is actually trying to explore some options for financial literacy, so maybe we have some room for collaboration in the future.
I would love that.
Well, that's the show. It's edited frugally by Rick Engdahl. Our email is answers@fool.com. For Robert Brokamp, I'm Allison Southwick. Stay foolish, everybody.